Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Peter, for giving us the opportunity, and thanks everyone for attending. I know I'm standing between you and lunch at the moment, so I'll get moving as quick as I can. International Graphite, our vision is to become Western Australia's and perhaps Australia's first fully integrated mine-to-market producer of graphite battery anode material. Our two main projects are the Springdale Graphite project, located 30 kilometres south of Ravensthorpe nickel mine and just north of Hopeton, and our Collie downstream processing facilities, where we anticipate building the full capacity for a battery anode from the Springdale mine. The picture on the right there, or the image on the right there, is of the Premier opening our pilot plant facilities in Collie, in the light industrial area, back in November of last year. Just briefly on the capital structure of the company, we're a young company. We listed on the ASX last April, 165 million shares in issue. We have a market cap of around $32 million, just under $5 million in the bank at the end of December. And probably 50% of the stock is tied up with board management and our major shareholder, Comet Resources. I wanted to just touch base briefly on the achievements of the company in the 12 months since we've listed. We are a significantly more advanced company than we were this time last year. We've established our battery anode material research and development centre in Collie, as the previous image showed. We've commissioned pilot-scale micronising and spheridising equipment, which we believe to be the most sophisticated equipment of its kind in Australia. We demonstrated that we could produce micronise and spheridise graphite from imported feedstock with that equipment. We secured a $2 million grant from the West Australian State Government for the development of a micronising facility in Collie through the Collie Transition Fund, and I'll talk more about Collie and the state government's role later. We've made a number of applications for further government funding through the Criticals Minerals Office and through the Collie Transition Fund, which we believe are going to serve as excellent non-dilutive forms of capital for the business going forward. We've ordered our qualification scale micronising equipment. That's a $1.5 million commitment. That's the first stage in building a micronising capability in Collie, and that plant will be used to qualify product with customers towards the end of this year. We have just recently announced the feasibility study for a 4,000 tonne per annum micronising facility in Collie, which had some outstanding economics for a $12.5 million investment. I'll touch on that in more detail soon. We are nearing completion of a cost engineering study on a battery anode material plant in Collie. And down at Springdale, we've completed 11,000 metres of resource and infill drilling, as well as some exploration drilling, where we've made 4 new graphite discoveries on our tenements. We've completed a flora survey, and we've completed some concentrate test work on some of the RC chips from the exploration drilling, confirming 97% grade for that concentrate and recoveries above 93%. So we think, or we know, we're significantly advanced from where we were 12 months ago with this company. The advantage of Collie. Collie is an emerging battery and renewable energy hub with $660 million committed by the West Australian Government for new industry. Of that, the day the Premier opened our facilities down in Collie last November, he announced the government's commitment to $202 million of Collie, what's been called the Collie Transition Fund, and that's direct grants to attract new businesses into Collie. The significance of Collie for us, not just for the government support, is its proximity to the power infrastructure network. And as Collie evolves over the coming 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a significant centre for the distribution of renewable power, and power was one of the critical steps in the purification process for battery anode material. So we think we're ideally located, fully integrated in Western Australia. Just briefly on the evolution of international graphite, we've come at the graphite industry from perhaps an unusual place. The founders of the business are Phil Hurst and Dave Past in the middle there, directors of the company. Phil's the chairman. Both Dave and Phil have worked on almost all the graphite development projects in Africa and Australia that are owned by AIM or ASX listed companies. Their skill set are metallurgists and process engineers, And so in the process of completing the feasibility studies for a whole variety of different graphite projects, they built up a significant amount of IP, not just in concentrate processing, but also in the way in which fines and coarse material found its way into the marketplace. And it's this knowledge about how to deal with the fines material, which was the orphan of the graphite industry going back 5 to 10 years, which has set up IG6 to benefit from the growing demand that's coming out of the battery mineral sector, because it's the fines element of a graphite deposit that's the more advantageous source of feed for battery anodes. We approached Comet Resources in October of 2021 to put together their Springdale deposit, which we knew to be particularly fine and was an ideal fit for a downstream business, and we merged the two businesses together, so we now have a fully integrated mine-to-market strategy between the deposit down at Hopeton and the facilities that we intend to build in Collie. And the team that we're working on this is probably second to none in the graphite development space, certainly in Australia and perhaps further abroad. Dave Pass and Phil, of course, the key technical people, but Jasbir, Josh and Greg have worked on all of those feasibility studies that I alluded to before, and so the depth of experience in metallurgy, process design, capital estimation, operating cost estimation is perhaps second to none. So just pausing for a moment, Graphite 101. I mentioned before that the fines was the orphan of the graphite industry. That's now changed with the development of the lithium-ion batteries and their skyrocketing demand. So this is the flow sheet that you'll see everybody talking about in the graphite space that's trying to get into battery anode. Springdale at the top there, represented by the mining, processing concentrator and the production of a 95% graphite concentrate. Our deposit is between 80 to 150 micron. So when we talk about fines for battery anodes, we're talking about 180, 150 sub-micron. This schematic ignores the coarse flake that other graphite producers produce. So once we get it to once the fine flake comes into concentrate form, and it has to go through 3 initial steps. It needs to be micronised, which is its own intermediate product. It has its own industrial applications. That's a pretty important part of the business and a piece that I'll touch on in a moment. And micronising essentially is taking that, let's call it 150 micron material down to a size of around 15 to 22, 23 micron. And that's the battery grade micron distribution that a lithium-ion battery requires. The next part of the process is spheridising that product, which is shaping it into what might be described as a golf ball. And then the third part of the process is to purify, and that essentially takes the graphite concentrate from 95% up to battery grade of 99.95%. And at that point you have a purified, uncoated, spheridised graphite product, and that's a perfectly fine product to take to market for the next stage and is regarded as an interim product. The real value, though, is getting downstream one step further into coated, and I've got some indicative pricing on the right-hand side of that schematic. The concentrate price, FOB China at the moment, for a fine, sort of a fines of 150 micron is around $800 a tonne. Taking it down to the next value step, you're looking at prices above $3,100 a tonne. And when I say above, it's very dependent on individual negotiations that you may have, so you could easily get $4,000 to $5,000 a tonne for that product. Once you coat it, though, then you're in a totally new economic world of $8,500 a tonne and above, and that's where one would aspire to be to realise the full value of a graphite deposit. And that's certainly where we're planning to evolve to. The first step in that process flow sheet was micronising. And one of the reasons we set up a business in Collie initially was because the state government was encouraging us to build out a first stage processing plant, which was a micronising facility, and which is what the $2 million government grant was for. The other part of the significance of the micronising facility is it establishes you in the marketplace during the period in time where most companies are going through product qualification for their full battery anode material. And so you have a period in the market where your projects are developing, but you don't have any cash flow capability. The The third reason for implementing a micronising facility is that through the spheridisation process of that flow sheet, you lose, roughly speaking, 50% of your product, which is regarded as waste. It's not truly waste because it has a market for it, and a micronising product is what that waste product is. And so, in us taking on this step, we're essentially developing a byproduct market for our battery anode material facility. So we've completed a feasibility study for a 4,000 tonne per annum plant. It has a capital cost of $12.5 million. It'll be supported by the qualification plant that we have will be on the water in June of this year. The operations will commence in Q3 2024. It'll have turnover in the order of $12 million per annum and EBITDA of around $5 million per annum. And that's sort of, if you like, our starter project that gets us into the marketplace whilst we pursue our battery anode material feasibility studies in Collie. So this is what our battery anode facility studies will look like. Our ambition is to produce a coated, purified, spheridised battery anode product. We've got a cost engineering study to be completed in the next couple of weeks, which will give an indication of what our cost structure will look like for that plant. The capacity of the plant will be to treat 40 to 50,000 tonnes of concentrate. It's intended that that concentrate will come from Springdale. That produces 20,000 tonnes of battery anode material, so bearing in mind the yield that I just mentioned before, it generates 20,000 tonnes of co-product or byproduct, and that's the micronising product that we'll have developed a market for. We're well advanced on our research and development program and that qualification program that's required as part of any graphite development through the R&D facilities we've established in Collie. Where we've produced our first product from back in September of last year, showing that we could produce product with the right characterisations for the battery anode work. Huge community support in Collie, as you could probably appreciate, as the town is transitioning out of its historical industries into the new world of renewable energies in particular, and new industries that are coming down to Collie. I'll just quickly touch on the Springdale Graphite project. It's, as I said, 30 kilometres from Ravensthorpe nickel mine. We have a mineral resource that we inherited from Comet Resources. Some of the most important pieces to this, though, is it's oxidised fresh rock. It's going to be amenable to a conventional low-cost flotation circuit. It will produce a 95% graphite concentrate, and we've already determined through test work in Germany that it can produce battery anode material from that concentrate. That's perhaps maybe one of the best assets we've had in the company was the aeromagnetic survey we inherited. Everywhere we drilled on those anomalies has confirmed the pathfinder capability of this survey to find more graphite. This resource that we've got of 15 million tonnes at 6% plus, including 2.5 million tonnes at 17%, is going to be significantly bigger, and it will certainly host a mine life well in advance of 15, 20 years. There's a whole bunch of exploration opportunities on these properties that we haven't tested yet, and we'll do that during the course of the feasibility period. Just to show you the depth we've pulled all the drill rigs out at sort of 75 to 100 metres for the holes. They remain open at depth, and as I said before, the mineralisation seems to be consistent across both the infill and then as we extend out beyond the existing resource. Very simple flotation circuit will be designed. The core competency of our team is to put these facilities together, so there's no complexity here that they can't deal with. We're forecasting a production rate of around 500,000 tonnes per annum, targeting a 10% head grade, which will produce 40 to 50,000 tonne of con, primarily free dig, limited drill and blast, conventional mining equipment, and that product will be trucked to Collie. I won't stop on the EV market and so forth, and graphite's importance to it, because we've all seen the statistics over the last 48 hours of the shortage of material and the demand for that material. So just to conclude, we think, as I mentioned before, we've got the strong foundations for success. We've had 12 months of outstanding news flow, and we've set ourselves up for now developing these assets. We've got the right commodity. We've got the right deposit with the right mineralisation. We've got a fantastic location. We're fully integrated in Western Australia, Our feasibilities are underway. We've got early cash flow in sight from a graphite micronising facility. We've well advanced now with establishing our R&D program for the BAM and completing the feasibility study for that. We've got a fantastic team, probably second to none in the graphite space, and ultimately this project will deliver the highest standards of ESG graphite to global gigafactories that won't be able to be exceeded by any other developer, given our location and the regulatory framework that we'll be operating under. Thanks for your time.